Flamio Hotman, the day is finally here. Netflix live action Avatar The Last Airbender is live and the reviews are in. So let's break down what the reviews are looking like for season 1 and I'll share my personal view as well. I just finished watching every single episode, so I'm really excited to talk it through with you in this video. There might be a few spoilers as we go along, so I'll do my best to shout out spoiler alert before I actually talk about any spoilers. Also, just a note on the background images, I'll be using clips from the trailer and stuff that was released on Twitter, so as long as you've seen the trailer and Twitter clips, you'll be okay. I'll start with a truthful summary that the reviews are mixed. Some love it and some hate it. Looking at Rotten Tomatoes at the time of making this video, it's sitting at 60% critic score and 77% audience score. The critic score obviously isn't great, but the audience score is okay. Is it enough to get a season 2? Honestly, I don't know. It will depend on how many people actually watch it on Netflix. For comparison, One Piece scores were much higher. They got an 85% critic score and a 95% audience score, and obviously that was enough to get One Piece's season 2 renewal. Honestly, I hope we do get a season 2, and if you listen to the review, you'll understand why I'm going to say that. One thing I will say is there's also a lot of fan service through the series, so if you're an OG fan of Avatar The Last Airbender, there's definitely going to be a lot of things you can pick out and really appreciate. Having said that, there are also differences, so you do need to be a little bit careful that you're not just searching for a like-for-like comparison to the animation. Let's start with the effects of the series, because I know there are a few critics and reviews that really don't like the special effects and lots of comments about the CGI. Personally, from a bending perspective, I really like how the bending looks. For me, the water bending and the fire bending are way better than the air bending and the earth bending, and those two kind of make up the most part of season 1 in terms of bending anyway. In terms of animals, I really love the air bisons. I don't care what the other reviews say about CGI or animals looking bad. I love how the air bisons look. I think they've nailed the look of Upper. His personality, the way they show him bonding with Aang, I think is all perfect. I just wish he got a little bit more screen time. I imagine he'll get that in season 2. I just think the animals in general are well done though. You can't convince me that Momo doesn't look cute or that Upper isn't fluffy and cuddly. Now, spoiler alert here, there's one other animal that I didn't know was going to be in it, but I was really pleasantly surprised, and that's the badger mole, a blind badger mole nonetheless, and it really reminded me of Toph from season 2. So for the effects and the animals, if we're going to score it, I would give it an 8 out of 10. I think some of the CGI did slip in some parts. If I was just rating the animals, honestly, I think I would give them a solid 9.5 out of 10, maybe even a 10 out of 10. Moving on to characters. Character-wise, I think Sokka is perfect. I can't say that enough. Ian Owsley has done a great job there. He's got the perfect balance between striving to be the best warrior, being an annoying brother, being a funny goofball, but also being a leader at the same time. And his character arc, along with Zuko's, is probably the highlight of the series, and I feel like certainly those two developed the most through season 1 compared to the other main cast. And talking about Zuko, I think Zuko's another perfect casting. Everything you want and expect from a season 1 Zuko is spot on. That perfect mix of burning rage, dutiful son and nephew, as well as that confused soul aspect. Now Aang on the other hand, he's kind of the opposite of Zuko. He's cute, he's fun, but sometimes in those really serious moments he does take it seriously. Now you can tell this is Gordon's first big role. Some of the acting is a little bit underdone in some areas and it's a little overdone in others, but let's give him some credit for being the lead character of a big series at such a young age. Don't forget, he was 12 years old when they started filming this. So in general, I think Gordon's done a pretty good job playing Aang. Now on to Katara. She was good, but in all honesty, she was the weakest of the main team for me. There was a good character progression through the episodes, so in that sense her character growth was pretty good, but in terms of being more lore accurate, I just think there were some moments where you think Katara would be more caring or compassionate. There were words that were used, but kind of her body expression and her hand gestures didn't necessarily portray a real care. It was more she was just verbally saying, "Are you okay?" And that was not just a one-off, it happened quite a lot through the series. So I'm not saying it was bad, I'm just saying I think maybe there's little bits of detail there that might improve through later seasons. In terms of the supporting cast, I felt like Iroh was a bit mediocre in episode 1 and 2, but he really comes into his own in episode 3 and beyond. The bond between him and Zuko really grows through the episodes, and it really does add so much to the series, just like it did in the animation. Spoiler alert again, by the way, there is a moment in episode 4 where Iroh is being comforted by Zuko over his son's death, and Little Soldier Boy's playing in the background. It's the most touching moment in the entire show. It's so memorable, it pulls on your heartstrings, and for me that really transformed the emotions of the live action. So if you're an OG fan, you'll really understand that little Easter egg. Sticking with the supporting cast, Azula was kind of a supporting cast, and she really surprised me. Beforehand, a lot of people were criticizing Azula's casting, saying she didn't look like Azula, saying she didn't look evil enough or scary enough. Well, if you watch the live action, you'll probably agree that she looked pretty evil and pretty scheming. And if you look at Twitter, there's a lot of people agreeing with me on that one. Unfortunately for the rest of Team Azula though, right now I don't rate Mei or Ty Lee. It's not really their fault, they didn't get much screen time, so it's hard to say for sure they're going to be bad, but their acting was just a little bit dry and they didn't really stand out for me. Azula on the other hand, she was very impressive, not just her acting and how she really encompassed what Azula was like, but also her power progression and her story progression, even though her scenes were limited, was pretty impactful through season 1. It was kind of the perfect backstory for Azula because we never really had that background, her development, how does she end up in the Earth Kingdom, what's her story progression to get there, none of that existed in the animation. Now again, a bit more of a spoiler here, so cover your ears for 10 seconds if you don't want this spoiler, but some reviews have complained that there was no blue fire. Firstly, there is a glimpse of blue fire, so if you look closely enough, you should be able to see it. Also, they do show her lightning bending, and I've got to say, the lightning looked amazing. I know it was heavy CGI, but I thought it looked really cool. And personally, I don't mind the normal colours they were showing her firebending with. It's part of her journey in season 1, and you definitely got that glimpse of blue fire, which suggests in season 2 she will have her iconic blue fire. In terms of the remaining supporting cast, June was only in 1 or 2 episodes, but she was pretty good as you'd expect from Arden Cho. I really feel like Arden did a perfect job encompassing what June's all about, that kind of sassy attitude that you'd expect from her. And spoiler alert again here, I found it really funny how June was the one that was flirting with Iroh, which is completely flipping the script from the animation, which I just found hilarious. Also, Zhao was pretty good. He was less ruthless aggression in the live action and a little bit more scheming and cunning. Also, a few supporting characters that I thought were really good. Gyatso is perfect, just nothing more to say on that. He's wise, he's caring, and he's everything you'd want from Monk Gyatso. Kyoshi's awesome, her power was insane. She didn't have much screen time, but the screen time she did have was really impactful. We did also see Roku and Kuruk. Both their screen times were cut quite short, but I thought they were very cool. A bit of a spoiler alert here, but I really liked how they portrayed Roku. In the animation, he was quite serious, but actually in this live action, they portrayed him as quite a cool character. He was joking around with Aang and kind of playing a bit of a prank on him when they first met. One other one I wanted to touch on is Suki. She really grew into her episode. You already know the animation version of Sokka and Suki, so that part's not a spoiler, and all I can say is you won't be disappointed. And if I add to that, I actually felt like Sokka and Suki had a lot more chemistry than Sokka and Yue did, which is really good to see, and hopefully it's setting up something special in season 2. The other cast just kind of fit in here and there. There were some really nice cameos from voice actors from the animation. So for example, the cabbage merchant, he is spot on, which is exactly what you would expect because it's literally the same person. Now if we look at what the other reviewers are saying, a lot of reviews say the youngest actors were a little too stiff, and I can understand why they say that. It is true in the early episodes the characters are maybe a little bit wooden, but I would also say they do grow through the series, and you do see a clear progression in their characters, but also their acting skills. So don't let this put you off the series. For the most part it works. Plus the bond between Team Avatar really looks good, and they really do feel like a team. And the same could be said for Zuko and Iroh. So in terms of the acting, I would probably give a 7 out of 10. Apart from a few really standout performances that were really 10 out of 10, I do think the overall acting will get better in season 2 and 3 though, so I expect this score will definitely go up if we get a season 2. So let's move on to talking about the story. Episode 1 has lots of story building, even a lot of general world building as well, but it's all crunched together, and that's not just in episode 1, it kind of carries on through the early episodes, which you could kind of expect given you've only got 8 episodes covering 20 episodes worth of stuff from the animation. I also felt like in this live action you kind of had characters saying a lot of things without really having the scene progression or the acting to back it up, which meant there were some significant moments that were either just cut out or they were kind of just thrown out there very quickly. Spoiler alert here, so cover your ears again for 10 seconds, but one example I can give of this is Aang being the last airbender. There was basically no time for him to work that out. It was literally just Gran said it, and then that was it. That was done. There was no more I'm the last airbender. There was no discovery. It's literally within the first like 15 minutes, Gran comes out and says it, and now it's a thing. Again, I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing, because they've got such little time to work with and so few episodes to work with. It's just sometimes doing it like that, in the live action, it felt like it was maybe taking away some of the significance of those moments. I would say though, the core of the story building is still very strong and it's still very good. He's got a clear journey, and the progression through the episodes to get to that end goal, they kind of stick to that quite well. It's just because there's so much story built in around it, it feels like that's the stuff where they throw in quite quickly. In terms of the timings, I would just say it felt like each of these episodes really needed to be over an hour long. If you look at the actual timings, most of them end up finishing well below an hour, and it does kind of feel like they've cut out a lot in editing. But ultimately though, I think the story's pretty good. But if we're basing it just off this story, I would say probably a 7 out of 10 of the story. Unfortunately, the writing and the dialogue doesn't quite go as well with the story, which means if the story's a 7 out of 10, the writing's probably a 6 out of 10. Moving on to the music. I have nothing bad to say about the music. It is spot on. It sounds just like the original, but at the same time, it sounds like they've added new elements to it. And you can take that from me because I've just watched Avatar live in concert last week, so I've really got the classic music fresh in my head. And when I compare that to what I've heard in the live action series, honestly, it's pretty close and they both sound just as good as each other. And here's a really big spoiler, so really do cover your ears for 10 seconds, but they've even got Secret Tunnel in there, which blew my mind because I was not expecting it to arrive in season 1. I loved hearing it. I wish they had emphasized it a bit more, because it feels like just having it in the background almost felt like it was lost a little bit, whereas to me that's such a significant song. They could have done a bit more to bring it to life and brought it to the forefront of the episode, or at least that moment in the episode. However, overall, I think they've done a great job capturing the soul of the series in the music, and for that, I think the music deserves a 9.5 out of 10. And actually, if you read most of the other critics and reviewers, you can see they all really like the music as well. And that brings us to our final overall view of the series. As a minimum, it's definitely better than The Last Airbender movie, which in fairness isn't hard to be. Now I'm on the positive side because I really enjoyed watching it, and obviously I'm a massive Avatar The Last Airbender fan, but I am also realistic. It's not perfect, there are plenty of faults, and I can show you the Avatarist tweet as well, where he's pretty much agreeing with that. Now just because there are faults, don't think it's bad though. There are also plenty of amazing moments, and these are the kind of moments that bring the series to life and make it worth watching. If you do watch it, and you feel the emotions and you enjoy the action, and you laugh at the funny parts and cry at the heart-wrenching parts, there's definitely a lot to enjoy in this series. And that's why the audience score is much higher than the critic score, because structurally and artistically, it's not great from a critic's point of view, but when you watch it as a fan of Avatar The Last Airbender, there's so much fan service in here, and there's so many nods to the original series that you can still find enjoyment in it. So hopefully me combining my views with that of the other critics that you've seen in this video will give you something to relate to if you have already watched the series, and if you haven't watched it yet, maybe it gives you a reason to go and watch it. For now though, that's my review, and that's what all the other critics are saying. Keep a lookout for my video tomorrow to get that full breakdown. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you later.